Hey everyone, I've been working on a bunch of projects in the studio, but today I will just focus on one of them. I decided to take a 4-week remote online painting class. This painting class is by famous painter Zoe Frank, who is a contemporary painter working in the field right now. She is represented by Sugarlift Gallery and has quite an impressive painterly resume. This class focuses on the history of pictorial space, or in other words, how painters and artists created visual space on the canvas in the last 500 years. It focuses on the more recent European history of art. The first class started with the Baroque era, which is understood to start roughly around 1600 and last until the middle of the 1700s. One thing I thought was very interesting about the book we are reading is that they connect ideas in science and philosophy to how those changed our visual representations in the arts. One example of this is that it was during this time that Galileo was working, and Copernicus also. And the idea that the Earth is not the center of the universe, but instead the sun is, had an effect on visual art as well. Art in this time was also used by the Catholic Church as a propaganda tool to combat the Protestant Reformation, which occurred in the beginning of the 17th century. In this class, we focused on the artists Caravaggio and Juan Sanchez Cotan. We examined how Caravaggio and also Cotan used very dark backgrounds to create a shallow space, which makes the objects seem like they are pushing forward into the viewer's space itself. They also had multiple edges and framing devices to do this. For example, a fruit basket would be hanging off the edge of a table. Baroque painters often liked to stack objects in space as well because this gave a higher visual impact. Caravaggio specifically used a lower eye level and stacking to create this visual impact on the viewer. He also brought much more reality into his paintings than was popular at the time, such as using ordinary people for models, showing a piece of fruit getting brown or going bad, showing the dirt under some of his subjects' fingernails and on their feet, and other things like this. So here, you can see my still life in an attempt at space like Caravaggio. The teacher suggested a wipeout technique, which means that you cover the canvas with a burnt umber paint, and then take turpenoid and wipe out the lighter parts, making adjustments as you go. So this is the first image of my wipeout section, and then I painted another layer over top of this to add the color. Also, based on comments from my classmates and teachers, I decided to remove that blue shape in the background because they said it was confusing. It was just a plastic kitchen tool, but I ended up taking it out in the final version. As for the Rococo artists, the following week, we focused mostly on an Italian artist, Tiepolo, who used people in a much smaller way than Caravaggio. For Caravaggio, people were the main focus, and for Tiepolo, people were like little confetti, just anchoring the space in the clouds. So the majority of his painting was actually negative space, and actually his painting was more about the full composition rather than individual human bodies. Another interesting thing with the Rococo painters is that they used color temperature instead of value to separate shapes. So for example, two things could be the same amount of light and dark, but one might be cooler and the other might be warmer, and this is what helped us tell them apart. During the Rococo, there was a very interesting argument about which is more important, drawing or color. Drawing at the time was seen as much more logical, and so therefore had a higher place in the hierarchy of the arts than color did. Color was seen as more sensual and more attached to emotions and more animalistic, and so it was seen as lower. The Rococo artists examined that belief and maybe challenged it to some degree. So here is my attempt at a Rococo still life. I will say this was really difficult because painting all the different color temperatures that the white reflects is hard to do. So in the next 2 weeks, in session 3, we will focus on the roots of modernism and Degas, and for session 4, we will focus on the modernists Picasso, Hans Hofmann, de Kooning, and Franz Kline. Thanks for tuning in, and I look forward to next time.